little country in the world, and I have dedicated my working life to the service of our people and to making it even better. As I take on this role, I want to acknowledge our outgoing Prime Minister, my very good friend, Jacinda Ardern. She's been one of New Zealand's great Prime Ministers. Jacinda provided inspirational leadership through a quick succession of the biggest challenges our country has faced. She gave voice to those often overlooked in times of challenge and purposefully went about doing politics differently. New Zealand is in a much better position compared to most countries, economically and socially, because of Jacinda's leadership and the critical decisions that she made. Jacinda's leadership has been an inspiration to women and girls everywhere, but it's also been a reminder that we've got a way to go when it comes to ensuring that women in leadership receive the same respect as their male counterparts. So on behalf of all New Zealanders, thank you, Jacinda. I take on this job at a challenging time for New Zealanders. COVID-19 and the global pandemic created a health crisis, and now it's created an economic one. And that's where my government's focus will be. While we'll be looking forward, I do want to acknowledge how hard COVID-19 was for the country. Some of the actions we took were amongst the hardest a government can do. We know they had a profound impact on a great many people. Despite the comparatively strong position we're in now, compared with many other countries, the tail of the pandemic still remains with us. Our economic management, however, has left us with record low unemployment, comparatively low levels of government debt, and we're projecting a return to surplus faster than the previous government did after the global financial crisis. But I know that many people in New Zealand, many families, are struggling at the moment. I know that people are worried about paying their grocery bills and paying their mortgages. The globe is now facing a new challenge, a pandemic of inflation. New Zealand's rate of inflation remains below the OECD average, but high global inflation is biting into Kiwi household budgets, and families are feeling that pinch. My government will bring a strong clarity, sense of purpose, and priority to helping New Zealanders through these tough economic times. Our focus will be on the right now and the bread and butter issues that people care about. Some people, many people, are hurting at the moment, and I want them to know that we are on their side. We'll continue to grow an economy that creates well-paying jobs, that lifts incomes, and creates opportunities for current and future generations. We'll focus on strengthening our core public services that we all rely upon, like health and education. People should feel confident that they can get ahead and create a better life for themselves and their families through their hard work. We know that many things are out of kilter. You shouldn't have to be on a six-figure salary to afford to buy a house, to support your children, and to have enough to retire on. Access to those basics needs to be extended to all those who are striving for better. We'll continue to tackle the housing crisis so that every New Zealander has a place to call home. Our work to tackle some of the social consequences of the past 3 tumultuous years is starting to bear fruit, but we know we've got more work to do when it comes to re-engaging young people, to supporting people who are experiencing mental health challenges, to tackle the underlying causes of criminal offending, whilst also holding offenders accountable for their actions. As Prime Minister, I will lead a team that's focused and working hard to fix the big issues that so many families and businesses are facing. I know that some New Zealanders feel that we are doing too much, too fast, and I have heard that message. Over the coming week, Cabinet will be making decisions on reining in some programs and projects that aren't essential right now. We will be focused on middle and low-income New Zealanders and the small businesses who are doing it tough to get by. We'll be making decisions on refocusing on some of the most pressing priorities, and also getting some new work underway on policies that will make a real difference to Kiwis over the longer term. New Zealanders understand we cannot do everything, and we certainly can't do everything all at once. They see the global economic pressures that New Zealand is up against. We aren't alone, but we are still in control of our own destiny. To ensure that our team is focused on the commitments I've just outlined, my second task will be to reorganise my cabinet. And I'm proud to have this opportunity to lead a team that's been forged through fire. Within our team, we've got the talent, the experience, and the ideas that New Zealand will need to recover and to thrive. I'll be speaking to my colleagues to confirm a cabinet reshuffle this week, and I expect to make announcements on that next week. But one role that I can announce, however, is who I intend to appoint as my Deputy Prime Minister. I am delighted to announce that I intend to appoint Carmel Sepuloni to that role. Carmel is an outstanding minister. She has overseen a period where record numbers of New Zealanders have been moving off welfare and into work. During her time as a minister, she's overseen the administration of the wage subsidy scheme that ensured many Kiwi businesses were able to stay afloat during the global pandemic, whilst also ensuring that our welfare system treats people with respect and with dignity. Carmel will be the first Pacifica person to hold the position of Deputy Prime Minister. And as a proud Westie, I can't think of a better sidekick for a Prime Minister from the hut. Kelvin Davis continues as the Deputy Leader of the New Zealand Labour Party. As a team, we are ready to crack into it, and I intend to hit the ground running. So, to the week. Tomorrow I'll be in Auckland to undertake the weekly morning media round, and in the afternoon I'll be meeting with ministers about policy reprioritization. On Tuesday, I'll be attending the annual Ratana celebrations alongside Jacinda Ardern. This will be her last formal engagement as Prime Minister. On Wednesday morning, I'll be officially sworn in as Prime Minister, and in the afternoon I'll chair my first Cabinet meeting and hold my first post-Cabinet press conference in the afternoon. On Thursday, I intend to be in Auckland to meet with business and community leaders to listen firsthand to the issues most pressing our largest city. And on Friday, I'll continue to meet with ministers to go over the reshuffle that will be announced the following week. I am incredibly proud of our government. We care about New Zealanders. We're experienced and battle-hardened and ready to take on the next round of challenges that our country faces. The current global economic conditions do demand a refocus, and I intend to provide that. But we don't need a change of heart. We need to apply the heart that we already have to the things that matter most to Kiwis, and that is exactly what we will be doing. I'm now going to hand over to Carmel, who has a few remarks, and then we will certainly open up for your questions.
Thanks, Chris, and acknowledging everyone that's here and watching. First, I just want to acknowledge you, Chris, for taking up this position and acknowledge the fact that all of your caucus, including me, believe in you and know that you will be an exceptional Prime Minister. Secondly, I just want to acknowledge the fact that you've made the decision to choose me as your deputy. That shows a great deal of confidence and belief, and I want to just express my absolute commitment to Chris as the next Prime Minister of New Zealand. I will be there backing Chris up every step of the way and doing whatever he needs me to do. I'm very humbled to have been chosen by Chris and supported by my colleagues to take on this very important role. It is very hard to fathom that a working class girl from Waitara who turned Westie, that person can become the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand. And now I get to back up the boy from the hut in that role. I want to acknowledge the significance of this for our Pacific community. I am proudly Samoan, Tongan and New Zealand European and represent generations of New Zealanders with mixed heritage. It is a huge honour and privilege to be offered this role, and I take this as seriously as I have taken any other role that I've undertaken across the course of my career. As Deputy Prime Minister, I will continue to be focused on what I always have been focused on, and that is serving our communities in whānau and Aotearoa, and I will do that to the best of my ability. I want to acknowledge too, as Chris has done, the outgoing Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. They are big shoes to fill, but we have the backing of our caucus to step into those shoes, and I look forward to doing the mahi. Kia ora.
How does the Hipkins government differ from a Jacinda Ardern government?
It's still a Labour government. New Zealanders voted very strongly for a Labour government at the last election, and that is what we're going to continue to deliver. As I've indicated, I do think that there is now a need for some reprioritization in terms of some of the areas that we're focusing on. We're in a very different position now to what we were in when we campaigned in 2020. Then we were right in the middle of a global pandemic. Now we are dealing with the economic aftermath of that, and so that is where our focus absolutely needs to be.
Had Labour forgotten about working families?
No, I don't think we have, but I think that some of them might feel that they are not hearing enough from us about the issues that really matter to them at the moment, and that is absolutely where our focus will be.
You talked about reining in some of the policies. Are you talking there about Three Waters and the TVNZ-RNZ merger, and will you be getting rid of both of those?
Look, I think New Zealanders will understand that the Cabinet is not yet met, and that we haven't had a chance to go in detail into all of those areas yet. So I'm not making specific policy announcements today. I don't think anyone would expect that that's what we're going to be doing today. But we certainly will be focused on running a ruler over the whole of the government's work program to make sure that we are focused on the things that are going to make a difference to New Zealanders. Maybe Jessica, why don't we have Jessica finish and then I'll come down here.
Aren't you concerned that there's not enough Māori representation at the top of the Labour Party?
The Māori MPs in the Labour Party are a fantastic team. They are incredibly talented, and we will continue to work strongly with them, and they'll continue to be integral to our team. They'll continue to be represented in the senior lineup in the Cabinet. Kelvin Davis at the moment is still the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, a job that he has done incredibly well. There is no vacancy there. Kelvin is our Deputy Leader, and he will continue in that role. And so I'm really looking forward to working with him. I think, I asked Carmel to be my Deputy Prime Minister because I believe that she's the best person to do the job, and she's the perfect complement to me. We've known each other for a very long time, and when I learned that Jacinda was leaving, I committed to the caucus that I would play my part in trying to reach a consensus, but in the back of my mind, I did have the thought, if the consensus is me, who would I want to be my deputy? And that wasn't putting the cart before the horse, but I absolutely knew from right at that moment that I wanted that person to be Carmel.
Congratulations, Carmel, on your appointment to the te a koe he. I te taho te mātou Māori, e rawe tō mahi, he tino rawe ki te rungo tō mahi. Engari, Chris Hipkins, what do you say to Māori who say this is a wasted opportunity to not have real engagement, relationship, partnership with Māori?
I say that we have an incredibly talented Māori team. They continue to occupy very senior positions in our lineup, and as we go through the Cabinet reshuffle, you'll see that will absolutely be continuing.
So what is the whakaaro of, say, Minister Jackson, who might take this as a snub, and other Māori in the Hapori Māori as well?
Willie Jackson is an integral member of our team. I regard him as a good mate. He's been incredibly supportive of me. He's supported me all the way through this process. I've had his backing, and he's got my backing. He will continue. No, not at all.
Prime Minister, just looking at what happens now with Jacinda Ardern, obviously there's been a lot of commentary over the last couple of days about misogyny, violence, threats of abuse. Will you commit to having some sort of diplomatic protection squad for Jacinda Ardern until she finishes up for the foreseeable future? Do you think that's necessary?
Look, we don't comment on those kind of matters publicly, and I don't intend to start now. In terms of the abuse directed at Jacinda, what I would say is it's never been acceptable. And I think that we as men have a responsibility to speak up about that as well. I think we often leave it to women to say this isn't okay and I don't feel okay about that. And many women don't feel comfortable talking in that way. So I think we as men have a responsibility to call it out when we see it and to say that it's not okay. It's not the way Jacinda has been treated, particularly by some segments of our society, and they are a small minority, has been utterly abhorrent. It does not represent who we are as a country.
Just as on this reprioritization and looking forward to your government, is this essentially an admission that the last couple of months, maybe the last year, the Labour government has got it wrong and they've been unfocused in what they've been doing?
No, I think we've just got to accept that things have changed a lot in the last few years. Even this time last year, when we were coming back from our break, we still had a closed border. We were still in the midst of our response to the global pandemic. A year is a very long time in politics. And so governments continue to adapt to the situation around them. We would have been doing this whether there had been a change of Prime Minister or not. And I think Jacinda Ardern signalled that last year. Our government's had a lot thrown at us over the last 5 years. We have continued to adapt. We've continued to step up to meet the new challenges that New Zealand has faced, and that is exactly what we're going to continue to do. Jane.
When you come to do your reshuffle, what are you looking to achieve, especially, I suppose, coming into an election year, and how different is it going to look from the lineup that you have now?
Look, I think you'll see that there'll be a balance of stability, a balance of drawing on the experience that we have at the moment. We've got some ministers who, as I said, have been through the fire. They've really been forged by that experience, and I want to draw on that. But also there is an opportunity for some renewal, to bring forward some of the amazing talent that we have. One of the challenges is, I went to the caucus meeting that we just had, where I was confirmed as the leader. You look across that room of 64 people and you think, gosh, picking 20 to be in the cabinet is a real challenge, because there is so much talent there, and there are opportunities to bring some of that talent into new roles, and for New Zealanders to see just how much we've got to, how much we can draw on.
You've said that during the negotiations and talks you didn't do any deals. There were no quid pro quos, but are you recognising, I suppose, some of the pressures coming from some of those groups, some of those newer backbenchers, as the party takes another look at itself, or a fresh look at itself?
No, I want to be really clear here. We decided as a team that we would try and approach this process to achieve unanimity around who the next leader should be, and therefore the next Prime Minister should be, and that we would do that in as collegial way as possible. No deals were done at any point during that process. Of course, other people may have taken soundings of their colleagues, and that's absolutely acceptable. You would expect that to happen in a process such as this, where you're striving to get consensus. Not one of them asked me for anything in return in order for their support. So no deals have been done.
And you've given no promises in terms of, obviously Grant Robertson, you've made an exception for finance, you've confirmed that. No other promises, no other commitments at all. You're starting with a clean slate when you approach this reshuffle.
No, and as I said, look, I want to get the balance right between making sure we're drawing on the experience that we've got and bringing in some new talent and some fresh energy and ideas as well.
Have there been any commitments made yet?
No.
So will you follow Jacinda Ardern and John Key and rule out raising the Super Act?
I'm not making specific commitments on things today. People will accept that I haven't actually got the job of Prime Minister at this point. We've still got a few days to go before that happens. I'm not making commitments. I'm not making those sorts of specific commitments. I'm not going to play the ruling in or out game today. You can ask me lots of questions, but my refusal to rule in or out things, it should not be taken as an indication either way on any of those sorts of topics.
Tax even back on the table?
Like I said, I'm not playing the rule in or out game. There you go.
For Ms Sepuloni, as the first Pacific Deputy Prime Minister, quite a few of your colleagues coming out, Deputy Prime Minister, some of your colleagues coming out, it's quite an emotional moment for them. I also think you're the third female Deputy Prime Minister as well. What's the significance of those to you and for those communities?
Huge significance to our community in terms of the representation, and I've received so many humbling messages about another glass ceiling being smashed. It is about role modelling to our next generation that these opportunities and these leadership roles are possible for them, but we can't role model or demonstrate that if we don't attain those positions. And so I do acknowledge that it is significant for our Pacific community, but as I said, and young girls, women, we're continuing to role model as a country that leadership positions for women are absolutely possible.
How did you tell? What's your relationship like outside of, or inside and outside of work? How do you work together?
Well, Carmel and I both came in 2008. We were both part of that intake as Labor was moving at that point from government to opposition. And we had the opportunity as a team, there were 13 of us at the time, to really get to know each other quite well in that period of time that we had an opposition that many of us prefer not to think about these days. We've been good friends all the way through that. And Carmel is someone who I trust completely. I cannot think of anyone I would rather have as my Deputy Prime Minister.
I'll just add to that. I jokingly just said to Chris that we get to keep being benchmates, and we have been a number of times over the years in the House. And I said to him, I get to keep trying to chatter to you in the House while you're trying to focus, and you get to continue to ignore me, which is jokingly. And I say that respectfully. One of the things that we've experienced together many times over the years.
Carmel, what's your family?
Hang on. Well, we'll come back to you. Why don't we come down the front?
Can I just ask Carmel a follow-up?
Yeah, I have a follow-up.
Okay, wait, a couple of follow-ups and then we'll come down the front.
Yeah, Carmel, how did you tell your family?
Oh, good question. I guess I did need to give them an indication that this might happen. My father actually just got back from Samoa yesterday, and so I haven't had a chance to sit down with him. I didn't want to tell him while he was in Samoa because I didn't want to run the risk of him telling the whole village over there before he returned. So my son picked him up from the airport and I told him over the phone. He's very proud. You know, he came here in 1964 from Samoa. He's Samoan, or his mother's Samoan, his dad is Tongan. And to think that he could come here to work on the railways and then the freezing works and marry a sheep farmer's daughter and have a daughter who would become the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand is very difficult to comprehend, but as you can imagine, very proud.
And how did your children take it?
So my older son at first was a little bit reluctant and was pretty shocked. When I say reluctant, I think I just mean shocked, but has sent me a wonderful message since, just telling me how proud he is of me as a mother and the journey that I've been on. And my younger son and the stepson of mine that I spoke to before I came down, I'm very excited, young boys, and again, they seem to be very proud of me. So.
How old are they, the boys?
My older one's 24, and then two stepsons, 16, 12, and then the 9-year-old, and also I'm a nana.
Can we ask Chris Hipkins the same question?
Yes.
How did you tell your family?
Look, how did I tell my family? It's interesting because, of course, they knew that I was putting my name forward and that I was in contention before I knew that I was going to get the job. And so, you know, they've had a few days to sort of get their heads around it and process it. But I do want to take this opportunity to say a few things about family. As a member of Parliament and as a public figure, I've worked really hard in the time that I have been in politics to keep my family out of the public limelight. I've got 2 children. I've got a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter at school and at kindy. I want them to grow up with a typical Kiwi kid life. I want them to be able to make mistakes. I want them to be able to learn and to grow without 5 million people looking over their shoulder. And so I intend to keep them out of the public limelight. You won't see pictures of them, on social media or in the media and so on. And I simply ask New Zealanders to respect that as well. I know that putting my name forward to be a minister, to be an MP, to be the Prime Minister, I make myself public property. I absolutely accept that. But my family aren't. And I ask that people do respect that. I am aware of the Wellington rumour mill, though, and I know how things go round in Wellington, so I will put something on the record that will be my final comment on the matter. Being a politician's partner and being a minister's partner when you're in the public spotlight, as I have been, particularly during the COVID-19 response, it's bloody hard. Families come under an enormous amount of pressure. A year ago, my wife and I made the decision that we would live separately, that we would do everything we can to raise our children together. We remain incredibly close. She's still my best friend, but we have made that decision in the best interests of our family. My view is that the only people whose business that is my own. But I've also seen the enormous scrutiny and pressure placed on Jacinda and her family. And so my response to that will be to keep my family completely out of the limelight. And so I just ask New Zealanders to respect that as well.
Prime Minister, congratulations to you both. And kind of moving on from that theme, is the way that a Chris Hipkins government relates to and interacts with the media going to be different than the years of Jacinda Ardern, which some might say resulted in, you might call the playing of favourites, but some avenues of dialogue and discussion being cut off?
I think I demonstrated, we have different style, Jacinda and I both have a different style. She's one of my best friends. It doesn't mean that we're the same people. And I think I've demonstrated over my time as a minister, but probably particularly during my time leading the COVID-19 response, that I will be accessible to the New Zealand media. And that I will make myself accessible as much as I can. Of course, I have a job to do as well.
More accessible than Jacinda Ardern was?
Well, look, I'll make myself as available as I possibly can. And, you know, there are limits to that. You know, there were some days during the COVID-19 response where I would start with media interviews. I'd, you know, do a 1 o'clock briefing and then I'd be doing evening media interviews. And at some point you actually have to do the job. So I can't guarantee that I'll be available for every interview that I get asked to do. But I'll certainly be endeavouring to make myself widely available to a broad range of media outlets.
Mr. Hipkins, on the economy, which you said you're going to focus on, what's more important to you, reducing the deficit and debt, or continuing on with some of the programs which you said were not absolutely necessary right now?
As with all things, we'll be aiming to strike the right balance. We have a responsibility to current generations to make sure we're managing the government's books on a day-to-day basis responsibly, but all governments also have a duty to future generations to make sure that we're making the right sort of investments that we're going to need to get, you know, the sorts of public services, the sorts of infrastructure that we rely on for the future in place. And so we'll always be striking to get the right balance there.
Do you expect to get that deficit down and get to surplus faster than perhaps the previous cabinet might have?
We've not made any decisions to change, you know, the fundamental macroeconomic course. And if we were to do so, we would do so through the regular channels that we use, the budget process and so on.
Minister,
Staying with the economy, the central bank is forecasting a recession. What's your message to international investors who are closely watching this leadership change and, you know, to reassure them?
New Zealand is in a very sound shape economically. In fact, our books and our economy is in better shape than many around the world. And we are absolutely resolved to helping New Zealanders through these tough economic times. I will be engaging closely with our business community. I want to work closely with the New Zealand business community. We are all in this together. Their prosperity will be the prosperity of New Zealand workers and their families. And so we should be working together, government and business, and that is exactly what I intend to do. And my message to them is that they can talk things down or they can talk things up. I am incredibly optimistic about the future of New Zealand. There's no doubt that we've got some, you know, pretty strong global headwinds at the moment when it comes to the economy. But we've shown that we can get through those before, and we will absolutely get through them again. Actually, I haven't been all the way over here, so we'll come over the side of the room.
Any thought to the portfolios that you yourself would like to keep?
I haven't turned my mind fully to the reshuffle, and I'm not going to make any announcements on that today. I will be resigning my existing portfolios, though, when I am sworn in, and I'll have acting ministers in those roles until you know the full reshuffle has been completed. Stuart Nash will be the Minister of Police. Jan Tinetti will be the Minister for Education. These are the acting portfolios until permanent ministers are appointed. Grant Robertson will be the Leader of the House and the Minister for the Public Service. He doesn't know that yet, but he will now. Luke.
In addition to this election being the election at the end of the year being between Labour and National, left and right, so it's going to be a battle of the Chris's. What do you think are the key differences between you and the other Chris, and why are you the best Chris to be Prime Minister?
Look, I don't really know Christopher Luxon particularly well, so I'm not going to proffer a view on him at all. I'm happy to talk about myself, as I have done quite a lot in the last day or so. What New Zealanders can expect from me is a fairly down-to-earth Kiwi. Outside of work, try just live a normal life the same as everybody else. That's going to be a little more difficult, I get now, than it was previously. I do passionately enjoy my work and my job. And I try as much as I can to be really upfront with people. So you can expect me to be upfront and honest and work really hard.
Prime Minister,
you've lived through 5, 6 now transitions of Labor leadership. Do you kind of pinch yourself that it's gone so well so far?
Look, I have to say, I take my hat off to the Labor MPs. I am so proud of our team. It has absolutely been the best leadership transition that I have ever seen in any party in the New Zealand Parliament. I think the maturity that we have seen from my colleagues and the way they've handled this process has just been so impressive. And so I feel really proud to lead them. And I think that just puts us in, a really good position and a really good shape. The level of unity and aroha that was in the room this morning when the vote was taken was just amazing. And so I'm really humble to have a team who have that faith in me, but also who have that much trust and confidence in each other to go through that kind of a process.
Have any further ministers or MPs signalled that they will not continue on as ministers or as MPs either from this point or at the next election?
No.
Māori will be expecting to have more Māori move to the front bench as a result of your reshuffle. Will we be seeing the likes of, alongside Kiritapu Allen, Willie Jackson, Meka Whaitiri move to the front bench? If we're not going to be deputy leader, then can we, deputy prime minister, then can we be in the front bench? Will you be guaranteeing those positions?
As I've indicated, Māori will continue to play a really important role in our senior lineup, but I'm not announcing the reshuffle today. I'm not announcing because I haven't done it yet. And so I need to go through that opportunity of having conversations with them. But I'll also say that amongst all of my conversations with my colleagues, including conversations with our Māori MPs, they are all most focused on the difference that they can make to New Zealand and to the lives of New Zealanders. And that is what they're more focused on that than they are on what positions or rankings that they hold. And I take great hope from that as well.
Māori voters are now wanting to see, if not a Māori deputy prime minister, then Māori in the front benches on behalf of the Māori voters. Will we see that?
And they will see when I announce the lineup that Māori will be a very integral part of our team, as they have been up until now.
Is the economy going to be your single biggest focus this year?
Economy will absolutely be right at the heart of what we are focused on. Now, the economy is a very big concept. There's a lot of aspects to that. The economy is, touches on every aspect of our lives. And so, of course, the challenges that we faced on the economic front have impacts on everything else. And so, yes, it will be right at the heart of what we're doing.
When you go into recession, does that automatically put you on the back foot going into the election?
I think all New Zealanders will appreciate that the global economic headwinds that we face at the moment are having a significant impact on New Zealand. I think what they want to know is that we are backing them to get through that. That's exactly what we'll be focused on.
Now that you're in the top job, can New Zealanders expect a tougher approach to crime?
As you know, because I've been the Minister of Police over the last few months, I find the rhetoric around tough on crime somewhat frustrating because it doesn't actually mean anything. Will we be tough on the causes of crime? Yes, we will. Will we be absolutely focused on reducing crime and reducing the underlying causes of crime? Yes, we will. Will we be focused on ensuring that those who undertake criminal activity are held accountable for their actions? Yes, we will. But that doesn't mean that we'll be doing the same of what we've always done, because the same of what we've always done, if it worked, we wouldn't be in this position. So we actually have to do some different things. If I take the ram raids, for example, we've gone through an exercise over the last few months of identifying all of the most at-risk young people who have been involved in that offending, making sure that we hold them accountable for what they have been doing, but also making sure that we're getting them onto a better pathway. Many of these kids are as young as 12, and I don't think anyone wants to see them locked up for life. We actually want to see them back on a better pathway. That is working. It's one of the reasons why we've seen a reduction in the number of ram raids that have been happening. Now, one ram raid is a ram raid too many. Job is not done there. But actually, rhetoric is a lot less valuable than actually focusing on things that will make a difference.
To rephrase my original question, will we see a different approach under your government in contrast to Ardern's government?
As I've said, our government continues to adapt and evolve as we face different challenges. And the challenges that we face in the law and order space are different now to what they were 12 months ago or 24 months ago. And so even in the last 6 months, you've seen us doing some things differently to what we were doing before that, because the pressure points have changed and the sort of challenges that we're facing have changed. And you'll continue to see us doing that.
You're in the middle of a large sort of working for families piece of work. Do you want to see that through either as continuing on with social development portfolio or as Deputy Prime Minister?
I'm certainly enjoying the work that I've been undertaking. I haven't had any conversations with Chris about portfolios or any changes that may or may not be made, and so I don't want to ruin my chances by preempting what his decisions might be in that space.
On that work program itself, do you want to see that completed, whoever's in the job?
Well, that's a commitment from us. There's some work that's underway that we want to see through as a caucus, and so I'll leave it at that.
You said that you shouldn't need a six-figure salary in New Zealand to afford a house. Do house prices need to fall?
I'm certainly not saying that.
Then what's going to happen?
Look, we'll work our way through increasing housing supply and making sure that New Zealanders have an opportunity to get on the housing ladder. Our focus has been on first-home buyers, and it will continue to be on first-home buyers.
So you don't think house prices need to fall in New Zealand?
Well, we've already seen a shift in house prices from the peaks that we were seeing. I guess to reframe your question, we're certainly not going to be doing things that aim to bring house prices down.
Ardern said that the changes to help people with their incomes are sort of a rolling wall of things that could change fast. Do you anticipate rolling out policy to help people with their incomes before the new tax year begins on April the 1st, or will that be part of the budget and trigger later?
Look, I'm not, as I've said, I'm not making specific commitments or announcements on any of those issues today. But I will say that, as we have done over the last 5.5 years, the budget process is the budget process, and that's not fundamentally going to change because there's been a change of leadership.
Yeah. How does your leadership style differ from Jacinda Ardern's?
Look, people can judge that for themselves. I'm not going to critique Jacinda's leadership style. I don't expect, I don't think she critiques mine. She critiques my fashion choices from time to time. But, I think everyone else can judge that.
In terms of not getting to policy specifics, but big picture priorities, where does climate change rank in your view of the things that the government has to tackle?
Climate change remains one of the major intergenerational challenges that we face as a country and as a planet, and we owe it to future generations to continue to work to make sure we are tackling the challenge of climate change. That's not going to change.
What does your commitment to the treaty look like?
Look, goodness me, that's quite a big question, and I will set out more thoughts on that in the coming days. There are going to be a few opportunities for me to set out that. I'm absolutely committed to a strong partnership between the Crown and Māori. That has been something that our government has worked really closely on cultivating and fostering, and that relationship is incredibly important. I want all New Zealanders to have the opportunity to get ahead, and that includes Māori New Zealanders. We do have a responsibility to right some of the wrongs of the past. That commitment has spanned across governments of different colours, and it seems to me that it only ever gets thrown up when one of those parties is in opposition. So I think we have a responsibility to make sure that we do right the wrongs of the past, and that we get to a position where everybody in New Zealand gets a fair opportunity to achieve their full potential.
So co-governance still on the table then for you?
Look, one of the challenges around co-governance is it means, no one understands what that means because we're talking about quite often quite different things. So if I look at some of the treaty settlements that have been reached over the last 20 years, they often have co-governance arrangements in them, and previous governments, including the national government. The national government probably signed up to more co-governance arrangements through the treaty settlement process than any other government did. But it means a different thing in a different context. So I don't want to get hung up on what has become a catchphrase. I think there is an uncertainty in New Zealanders around what we mean when we're talking about co-governance. So I want to make sure that in each context we're very clear about what we mean, and I acknowledge that that hasn't always been clear.
Your proposed focus on the economy. Can I just do a quick fire round of questions for you? What's the inflation rate at the moment?
Sorry, no, I don't. Actually, you've caught me out here. I haven't gone through the key numbers. I normally do, but I haven't done that since Christmas. A few other things on the go, so I won't engage in your rapid fire of questions. But I will do that. But I will do that in due course. Bernard.
What's the unemployment rate?
Bernard.
What about the unemployment?
It's about 3.3.
And price
You just robbed me of an opportunity there, Bernard. But thank you.
If it's going to be a game show, I can do that too.
Yeah.
Just asking on the budget process, you said that's where you're going to make your decisions. Are we too far through the budget process before the May budget for you to make changes?
No.
So you do have time in the next few weeks, months to change some of the direction, and do you expect that there will be changes?
Look, Grant Robertson and I haven't sat down yet to discuss the budget process, so we'll certainly be doing that in the next few days. Yeah, coming over here.
Jacinda Ardern cast a huge shadow with her international profile. Will you even hope to emulate that in the 9 months you've got into the next election? Will your profile be closer to home, or your focus be closer to home?
Look, I'll continue to lead New Zealand internationally as well as nationally. That is the job of the Prime Minister, and I'll continue to do that.
Do you have aspirations, though, for New Zealand in the world, or is that not?
Look, I think one of the things we should recognise about Jacinda Ardern's tenure as Prime Minister is I think she did a lot to really put New Zealand on the map. And there are huge opportunities that have flown from that for New Zealand and for New Zealand businesses, our exporters. The work around trade, for example, the free trade agreement with the UK, free trade agreements with the EU, upgrade of the FTA with China, huge amount of work in that trade space that Jacinda Ardern has helped to lead, and her international profile has contributed enormously to what can be significant wins for New Zealand. And so, yes, I think we'll continue to engage internationally. We'll continue to build on that very strong legacy that she has left us. But I will absolutely also have a very strong focus here domestically. We've got time for a last couple of questions. So, you haven't had a question.
One of the things that Jacinda Ardern talked about a lot when she became Prime Minister was leading a transformational government. Is the Chris Hipkins project a transformational project?
Look, I'm not really interested in those kind of catchphrases. Basically, we will deliver a very solid government that is focused on the bread and butter issues that I've said, that matter to New Zealanders and that are relevant to the times that we are in now. 2017 was 5.5 years ago, and quite a lot has happened since then.
China in the next few months, is that on?
Look, I haven't firmed up an international travel program yet.
Carry on the Prime Minister's travel itinerary, or is that off the table now?
Look, I don't know that any dates around travel to China had been locked down, so there's some further discussions. But our relationship with China is incredibly important. Economically, it's incredibly important, but also it's also important for a range of other reasons. I've travelled to China as Minister of Education. Our education relationship is exceptionally important, and so at an appropriate moment, if I have the opportunity to go to China, of course that will be high on the priority list. But I'm not locking anything in on the travel front at the moment. Last question over here.
Can you name the 3 articles of the treaty?
Yes, we have Kawanatanga, Tino Rangatiratanga, and so no, I can't remember the other. So,
will you attend the King's coronation?
I haven't made decisions on my international travel program yet.
How special would that be, having a boy from the Hut at Buckingham Palace meeting?
Look, I don't want to get ahead of that. The travel program hasn't been confirmed yet. I think it's pretty special for people based on the feedback that I've had, people from the Hut to have a Prime Minister from the Hutt Valley. Thanks very much, everybody. Cheers.